Safety on a construction job site doesn't happen by accident. Your employer is responsible for creating a hazard-free workplace so you don't get hurt while on the job. But keep in mind, your personal safety starts with you. You need to be aware of the potential hazards on the job site, you need to take action to avoid or eliminate them, and you need to report any hazards or unsafe conditions. The most basic way you can stay safe while on the job is through various work practices. Safe work practices are a combination of learned behaviors, routines, and habits you can use in order to protect yourself while on the job. And after completing this training module, you'll be able to demonstrate safe work practices and procedures that can help protect you and others around you. Did you know? How you take care of yourself off the job has a big impact on how well you perform on the job. By eating right, getting enough sleep, exercising regularly, and having a healthy way to handle stress, you'll feel better at home and at work. And for some, not taking care of yourself can ultimately affect your ability to stay focused and work safely, which could lead to carelessness and on-the-job accidents. Being physically, mentally, and emotionally fit will enable you to put forth your best effort and stay safe at work. Construction work often requires heavy manual lifting, and your body may be subject to repetitive twisting or flexing motions, which can damage your muscles, tendons, ligaments, and nerves, especially in your back. And over time, this stress on your body can result in painful musculoskeletal disorders, which may require treatment, therapy, or worse, surgery. Most job sites use forklifts and other equipment to lift and move heavy objects. However, sometimes it's necessary to move objects by hand. In these situations, knowing the proper way to lift can help you prevent back injuries. Always make a plan before lifting. First, ensure your path is clear of all hazards like loose materials or debris. And be careful on uneven ground and slippery surfaces. Then, test the object's weight by lifting one of the corners. If the load is too heavy, or if the object is oddly shaped, use a mechanical lifting device or ask for help. When you're ready to move the object, place your feet as close to it as you can. Position your body so you're centered over the load, then get low by bending at your knees. Be sure to get a good grip on the object and then lift straight up with your legs in a smooth motion. Don't twist or turn your body as you walk, and keep the load steady and close to your body. Any sudden twisting or turning can result in a back injury. Once you reach your destination, lower the load slowly by bending your knees and letting your legs do most of the work. Don't let go of the object until it is securely in place. While poor lifting technique is a leading cause of back pain, there are other contributing factors. Sitting or standing with poor posture, especially for long periods of time, strains your back muscles and can lead to back pain and injuries. And it's worth noting that many back injuries don't develop from a single lift, but from relatively minor strains over time. So take your time and do every lift right. No one knows your body better than you. If you're ever uncomfortable or unsure about the safety of your back, talk to your foreman. It's better to be safe than sorry. Whether moving materials manually or mechanically, safe work practices can mean the difference between a life and death situation. Falls, struck by, and crushing hazards are just a few of the dangers construction workers face when it comes to material handling and storage, especially with the use of heavy mechanical equipment on the job site. Properly store, tie down, turn off, and secure all materials and equipment when not in use. Use blocking materials large enough to support the load safely. When moving objects manually, grasp available handholds to avoid pinch hazards. Slips and trips. We've all been there. Usually they're the result of moving too fast or not paying attention. And you know how much it can hurt when they end in a fall. Slip, trip, and fall hazards can exist anywhere on a job site, but most of these hazards can be prevented through some personal best practices and a little good housekeeping. As you move about the job site, you can avoid slips, trips, and falls by regularly checking your footwear and cleaning off any excessive amounts of dirt or grease, keeping a clear line of sight, Make sure you can see where you're going and never carry a load you can't see over or around. Taking your time, even when you're in a hurry, always walk at a reasonable pace and be aware of your surroundings. And keeping at least one hand free when possible so you can use handrails on stairs and ramps. Good housekeeping is more than just cleaning. For example, a cord crossing a walkway is a tripping hazard, and spills left on the ground can cause someone to slip and fall. Housekeeping is not a one-time exercise, but rather an ongoing effort. Do your part by removing or reporting any slip, trip, or fall hazards you encounter in your workplace. It's likely you'll need to wear some type of personal protective equipment, or PPE, as part of your job. You can think of PPE as being a shield between you and any possible hazards you might encounter. There are many forms of PPE designed to protect different parts of your body from various hazards. Let's start at the top. If you work where objects may fall from above or hit you on the side of your head, you may be required to wear a hard hat. There are different types and classes of hard hats, and each one is designed to protect you against specific hazards. For example, a Class G hard hat provides general protection, while a Class E hard hat offers protection against high-voltage shocks and burns. It's important you wear the proper hard hat for your work environment and the hazards you might face. Aside from the hard outer shell, the suspension system inside the hard hat leaves some space between the shell and your head. This helps absorb the impact so you don't feel the full force when something hits your head. Adjust the suspension system to get a snug fit. You all know the uncomfortable feeling of getting something in your eye. Eye and face protection prevents injuries from chips, sparks or other flying particles, splashes, and harmful light radiation. Common types of eye and face PPE worn on job sites include safety glasses, goggles, face shields, and welding goggles and helmets. Regular prescription glasses don't offer adequate protection. If you wear them, you'll need to also wear safety glasses or goggles over them. And remember, if you need to wear a face shield, you must wear safety glasses or goggles too. If you work around loud equipment or power tools, you may become so used to the noise that you don't even notice it after a while. Exposure to excessive noise can cause gradual hearing loss. As the damage builds over time, you'll eventually be able to notice this permanent loss to your hearing. If your job site is noisy, wear hearing protection such as earplugs, earmuffs, or canal caps to prevent hearing loss. Also, get your hearing tested at least once a year to make sure your hearing protection is effectively doing its job. Inhalation is the quickest and most direct route for airborne contaminants to enter your body, so it's important to protect yourself by using appropriate respiratory protection. Different respirators are designed to protect against different inhalation hazards. When worn properly, they keep dusts, vapors, fumes, and mists from entering your lungs. Respiratory protection is also required to supply clean breathing air when oxygen levels are too low. If you wear a respirator for work, you'll need to pass a medical evaluation beforehand. And if the respirator you use has a tight-fitting facepiece, you'll need to go through a routine fit test every year. If your job involves potential hazards to your hands and arms, you'll need to protect them too. Gloves are the most common type of PPE and can protect against cuts, abrasions, burns, and electric shock. Gloves come in a variety of styles and fabrics designed for specific situations. For instance, leather or canvas gloves are good for handling rough objects like glass, sheet metal, or loose boards with nails in them, while fabric gloves protect against dirt and abrasions. If you're at risk of foot injuries from falling or rolling objects, or from crushing or penetrating materials, you must wear protective footwear. This includes steel-toed boots or shoes. You'll want to wear the right type of safety shoe or boot for the hazards present. In some situations, you may need to add guards to cover the tops of your feet or insert metal insoles to protect from puncture hazards. Electrical hazard safety shoes are necessary if you're at risk for shock or electrocution. If there is any risk of injury to your entire body that your employer can't eliminate, you'll need to wear full body protection. Examples of body protection include coveralls, vests, jackets, chemical-resistant bodysuits, and fire-resistant or FR clothing. Regardless of the type of PPE you use, get in the habit of routinely inspecting it and always follow the manufacturer's suggested maintenance and replacement schedules. Never use any damaged gear. Turn it in to your foreman for replacement or repair. Keep your PPE clean and store it properly after each use. Be sure to protect it from contamination, damage, dampness, and direct sunlight. By keeping it safe, it will do a better job of keeping you safe. Falls are the leading cause of fatalities in the construction industry. When working at heights, various forms of fall protection will warn you of potential fall hazards, keep you from falling, or safely stop you if you do fall. Anyone on a walking working surface 6 feet or more above a lower level, constructing a leading edge, or working in hoisting areas is required to have fall protection. Several fall protection systems may be in use at your job site. Guardrail systems are physical barriers used along an unprotected or exposed side edge or other area of a walking working surface to prevent you from falling to a lower level. Safety net systems are horizontal or semi-horizontal barriers that use a netting system to stop you or tools from falling before contacting the surface or structure below. Warning line systems are defined areas on a low-sloped roof commonly used on rooftops to warn you if you're approaching an unprotected roof edge. You can perform work inside a warning line system without additional fall protection. A personal fall arrest system is a form of PPE that safely stops you from falling and includes a body harness, a lanyard or other connector, and an anchorage point. You must be trained by a competent person anytime you could be exposed to fall hazards. Training includes recognizing fall hazards at your job site and how to minimize them, correct procedures for erecting, maintaining, disassembling, and inspecting the fall protection equipment and systems you will use, proper use and operation of the fall protection and fall arrest systems, your role in a safety monitoring system if it is used, limitations of the use of mechanical equipment when working on low-sloped roofs, procedures for the handling and storage of equipment and materials, and the erection of overhead protection, your role in the fall protection plans, and an understanding of the OSHA fall protection rules. Your employer must retrain you as necessary and prepare a written certification of your training. Contrary to popular belief, it is possible to prevent injury and death caused by falls. Use fall protection equipment correctly, protect it from job site hazards, and inspect it prior to each use. Doing this may save your life. Here are some safe work practices to help reduce injuries and accidents while on the job site. Live a healthy lifestyle to reduce fatigue and prevent careless accidents. Use good lifting techniques, and whenever possible, use a mechanical lifting device. Keep your work areas clean and always store or dispose of all materials properly. Wear the proper PPE for the job, and recognize fall hazards and use systems to prevent fall injuries. You've learned some important safe work practices. Keep them in mind while you're on the job site and follow them to keep you and your coworkers safe. Safety on a construction job site doesn't happen by accident. Your employer is responsible for creating a hazard-free workplace so you don't get hurt while on the job. But keep in mind, your personal safety starts with you. You need to be aware of the potential hazards on the job site, you need to take action to avoid or eliminate them, and you need to report any hazards or unsafe conditions. Your work environment includes the physical location where you perform your assigned duties, as well as the surrounding conditions. Much of your work environment is controlled by your employer based on various OSHA regulations. After completing this training module, you'll be able to identify specific worksite arrangements that help maintain a safe work environment. Exposure to hazardous substances can cause diseases which may appear in the short term or over a longer period of time. In construction, there are 3 categories of health hazards that need to be recognized, evaluated, and controlled, which include chemical, physical, and biological hazards. Chemical hazards include gases, vapors, fumes, dusts, fibers, and mists. Some possible health effects from chemical hazards include asphyxiation, damage to body tissue and organs, silicosis, mesothelioma, and cancer. When 2 or more hazardous chemicals are present at the same time, the effect on your body can be greater than the effect of the substances by themselves. For example, the risk of developing lung cancer is greatly increased by exposures to both cigarette smoking and asbestos. Physical hazards common to the construction job site are temperature extremes, high noise levels, repetitive motion and working in awkward positions, and ionizing and non-ionizing radiation. The effects of physical hazards range from sunburn and frostbite to hearing loss and cancer. To protect yourself against physical hazards on the job site, wear the proper personal protective equipment, or PPE, to protect you from excessive noise and weather conditions, and use all equipment correctly and safely. Biological hazards you may be exposed to are fungi or mold, bloodborne pathogens if you or others become injured, bacteria, poisonous plants, and poisonous and infectious animals. Allergic reactions, hepatitis, HIV, infections, and poisoning may result from exposure to biological hazards. Your employer should provide you with protective measures controlling your exposure to health hazards. This can be accomplished by monitoring exposure limits, following good work practices, and performing medical surveillance after exposure occurs. You play an important role in keeping yourself and your co-workers safe from injury and illness. Be aware of the hazards present at your job site. Use the appropriate PPE and stay within the communicated exposure limits. If you're ever unsure, ask for help. OSHA's Hazard Communication Standard, often referred to as HAZCOM, requires your employer to inform you of the chemicals you may be exposed to, the hazards associated with each of them, and how to protect yourself from their potential dangers. As a part of the HAZCOM standard, your employer must create a list of all hazardous chemicals used at a job site, ensure there's an easily accessible safety data sheet, or SDS, for each chemical, ensure each chemical container is properly labeled, train workers on chemical hazards and how to use safety data sheets and labels, and develop a written HAZCOM program that explains how the HAZCOM requirements are met. While your employer has a lot of responsibility when it comes to the HAZCOM standard, it's important you do your part to stay safe too. For example, before working with any chemicals or other hazardous substances, remove all jewelry to avoid chemical burns. Read the label on chemical containers or review the SDS to understand the specific hazards of the chemical and any emergency procedures to follow. Wear any required PPE, which may include eye and face protection, respiratory protection, chemical-resistant gloves, coveralls or other clothing, and safety boots. If your job site has an emergency eye wash station or emergency shower, make sure you know where the nearest one is located. Keep all chemical containers closed and secured properly when not in use to prevent the accidental spill or release of harmful vapors. When you finish handling a chemical, wash your hands thoroughly and make sure your PPE is clean and properly stored. You should never eat, drink, or smoke near chemical application or storage, and know where to dispose of any unused or waste chemicals as directed by your employer. Chemical wastes should not be placed in the same container unless you know it is safe to do so. Be sure to know how your employer wants you to respond to any chemical spills or leaks. Safety signs and tags have been developed as a way to help prevent accidents on the job site. They warn you about potential hazards on the site so you can take appropriate precautions. You may encounter different types of accident prevention signs. These signs can indicate danger, caution, exit, safety instructions, directions, and traffic. These signs use specific color schemes to differentiate themselves from each other. For example, danger signs are red with a black border, and caution signs are yellow and black. In addition, you may see accident prevention tags, which are used as a temporary means of warning workers of an existing hazard, like defective tools or equipment. In order for safety signs and tags to be effective, you have to not only know what they mean, you have to do what they say. Remember, these signs are there for your safety. Working around and using equipment powered by electricity is necessary on any job site, but it can expose you to a greater risk of burns and internal injuries caused by misused or defective equipment. Such injuries can be caused by electrocution, explosions, fires, and arc blast. Shock and electrocution happen when you become part of an electrical circuit. Its effects on the body can range from a sharp tingle to immediate cardiac arrest. Burns may appear as small marks on your skin, but can result in severe internal injuries. Electrical burns are extremely serious and require immediate medical attention. Explosions can occur if electricity ignites explosive vapors in the air. The ignition can be triggered by something as simple as flipping a switch. Fires often result from defective or misused electrical equipment. With an extension cord, for example, loose screws that connect the cord to the plug may ignite a fire. Arc blast is an explosion that can disintegrate everything within a specific area, causing eardrums to rupture and propelling shrapnel with a force equal to a small hand grenade. Only a qualified person who is specially trained on how to avoid electrical hazards should work on or around exposed energized parts. Visually inspect all electrical equipment before each use. Only use approved electrical equipment and use all equipment according to the manufacturer's instructions. Wear specialized PPE like a Class E hard hat, safety goggles, gloves, and non-conductive footwear while working with or near exposed electrical equipment. And survey the area before starting any overhead work to ensure there are no overhead wires. There are a few things you should avoid doing to stay safe as well. Do not attempt to handle electrical equipment you haven't been trained on. Never try to repair electrical cords or equipment if you're not qualified to do so. Avoid contact with a fallen power line. Never assume it's safe to touch, even if it appears to be insulated. And do not touch an injured person who may still be in contact with an electrical source. Electrical safety is not something to take lightly. If you ever feel like something isn't right with a piece of electrical equipment, don't use it. Remove the equipment from service and report it to your foreman. Fire is one of the deadliest workplace hazards and one of the easiest to prevent. In order to keep yourself and those around you safe, it's critical you know the most common causes of fires on a construction site, know how to prevent them, and what to do if a fire breaks out. A fire could start from any number of potential sources of heat or ignition, including things like an electrical source, smoking, welding, or grinding. Fire is made possible by 4 components that are commonly referred to as the fire tetrahedron. The components represented by the tetrahedron are oxygen, heat or another ignition source, fuel, and a chemical chain reaction. The absence of any one of these elements will prevent a fire from starting or continuing to burn. One of the most important strategies for preventing fires is good housekeeping. There are a few key things you can do to control fire hazards. Regularly remove debris and trash using proper disposal methods. Arrange the job site and equipment so it doesn't obstruct exit routes or emergency equipment. Follow all guidelines for preventing and controlling combustible dust hazards. Perform all equipment maintenance in a well-ventilated area and clean up any fuel spills immediately. Report all chemical spills right away to ensure authorized employees can safely clean it up as soon as possible. Store all flammable liquids in a specially designed safety cabinet or storage room. And remove combustible materials such as cardboard, paper, or fabric from the area before you do any work that creates sparks or uses an open flame. If you discover a fire, evacuate the area immediately and alert others on your way out. Don't be tempted to fight the fire unless you're designated, trained, and equipped to do so. Always follow your employer's fire prevention and response procedures. Any work that involves burning, welding, using fire or spark-producing tools, or that produces a source of ignition is referred to as hot work. Because of the nature of the work being performed, there are a number of potential hazards associated with hot work, including fires and explosions, toxic fumes and gases, harmful radiation, electrical shock, noise, combustible dust, and falling objects. When possible, the object on which hot work is being performed should be moved to a designated fire-safe location. If that object cannot be moved, all movable objects in the surrounding area that can catch on fire must be taken to a safe place or protected in some way. If all the fire hazards cannot be protected, steps to confine the heat and sparks must be taken. If you see hot work being performed, stay alert to any hazards that may arise. If you're not an authorized hot work operator, fire watch, or permit authorizing individual for this job, stay away from the permit-required area during hot work operations. Whether you're a part of the hot work process or not, whenever you're near hot work operations, take care of yourself by wearing the appropriate PPE. And look out for others by staying alert for possible dangers and reporting them immediately. A permit-required confined space, also known as a permit space, is large enough for an employee to fully enter, has restricted means for entry or exit, is not designed for continuous occupancy, and has a hazardous atmosphere or other serious hazard. Before anyone can enter a permit space, the employer must prepare a written permit that outlines all the hazards and how to control them. There are 3 distinct roles that must be filled in order for entry operations to occur in a permit space. The authorized entrant enters a permit space to do the assigned work. The attendant is stationed outside a permit space to monitor the authorized entrant and start a rescue operation if needed. And the entry supervisor is responsible for determining if acceptable entry conditions are present, for authorizing entry and overseeing entry operations, and for terminating entry. Your employer will assign a competent person to identify all confined spaces that a worker may enter. To warn you of the existence and location of all permit spaces, your employer will post a sign that says, "Danger, do not enter," or by restricting access to the space with a lock or barrier. Permit spaces are incredibly dangerous places. Unless you're trained and authorized, never attempt to enter a permit space. Working around and in excavations is one of the most dangerous jobs in the construction industry. There are many hazards you can run into, but most can be placed into 3 categories: underground utilities, confined space hazards, and cave-ins. Most trenching and excavation injuries are caused by lack of a protective system, failure to inspect the trench and its protective systems, unsafe spoil pile placement, and unsafe access to or egress from the excavation. Before you start an excavation project, a competent person will take steps to ensure the site is safe for digging operations. Excavations can be deadly, but they don't have to be. When working in trenches, know your responsibilities in the excavation process. Ask if you are not clear on any instructions. Always wear the required PPE. Know your company's emergency response procedures. Be sure your competent person tested the air when necessary before entering qualifying excavations. Keep materials or equipment that might fall or roll into an excavation at least 2 feet from the edge. Wear a warning vest or other suitable clothing marked with or made of reflective or high visibility material when you are exposed to vehicle traffic, and use warning barricades or other means to alert equipment operators of the edge of an excavation. Those are just a few safety tips when working at excavation sites, but be sure to always follow your company's instructions to keep you and your coworkers safe. A work zone is an area of roadway where construction, maintenance, or utility work activities are being performed. Some work zone activities can include building or repairing a bridge, adding travel lanes to the roadway, laying asphalt, and replacing electric, gas, or water lines within the roadway. There are a number of hazards you may face when working within a designated work zone, including being struck by oncoming traffic or heavy equipment, inhaling asphalt fumes, being exposed to extreme heat or cold, and contacting underground electrical lines. When working near traffic or heavy equipment, wear the proper PPE, including a hard hat and high visibility apparel that meets ANSI's Performance Class 2 or 3 requirements. Work where drivers can see you and position yourself at a safe distance from traffic. Remember, drivers may not be able to see you in low light or when weather conditions affect visibility. Because distractions could prevent you from noticing potential dangers, move in and out of traffic spaces and heavy equipment areas quickly and safely. When existing signs, signals, and barricades do not provide enough protection for operations on roadways, then flaggers or other traffic controls must be provided. Keep yourself safe in a work zone by remaining alert to everything around you at all times. Construction work is often performed outdoors or in buildings under construction that do not have heating or air conditioning. Extreme temperatures, both hot and cold, are not only uncomfortable, they can be dangerous as well. When you're working in hot conditions, your body will perspire to keep cool. When that's not enough, serious heat illnesses can occur. Illnesses include heat rash, cramps, heat stress, heat exhaustion, and heat stroke. General symptoms of heat stress are irritability, fatigue, headache, substantial thirst, and heavy perspiration. Heat stress can progress to life-threatening heat stroke, which requires immediate medical attention. On the other hand, if you're exposed to cold and wet conditions, serious injuries can occur, such as hypothermia, frostbite, chilblains, and trench foot. General symptoms of cold stress are shivering, loss of concentration, and difficulty breathing. Hypothermia, where the body's core temperature drops below 95 degrees, is a life-threatening condition. Depending on the type of work you do, you may have to work in situations where the temperature is either extremely hot or extremely cold. In these situations, take steps to ensure you're adequately protected. Remember, to keep yourself safe when working in extreme heat, wear clothing made of breathable fabric. Drink plenty of non-caffeinated beverages to keep you hydrated, and take breaks in cool or shaded areas. To keep yourself safe when working in extreme cold, wear layers of clothing made of breathable fabric. Wear appropriate cold weather outerwear and footwear like hats, gloves, a heavy coat, and insulated boots. Do what you can to stay dry. Stay hydrated by drinking water and warm beverages, and take breaks in warm areas. Whenever you begin to feel the effects of working in extreme heat or cold, take a break. And if things don't start to improve after a few minutes, ask someone for help. You've learned a lot in this training program. Here are a few highlights from each of the topics. Follow safe guidelines that control your exposure to health hazards. Know how to safely use chemicals at your job site. Pay attention to safety signs and follow their instructions. Take special care when working with electrical equipment. Practice good housekeeping to prevent fires. Wear the appropriate PPE when performing hot work and keep a safe distance when you're not involved. Stay away from confined spaces unless you are trained and authorized to enter them. Understand your responsibilities in trenching and excavation work. Stay alert in work zones. And take breaks when working in extreme temperatures and make adjustments when you start to feel signs of stress. Every work environment has its own set of hazards. Work safely to prevent possible illnesses and injuries. Safety on the construction job site doesn't happen by accident. Your employer is responsible for creating a hazard-free workplace so you don't get hurt while on the job. But keep in mind, your personal safety starts with you. You need to be aware of the potential hazards on the job site, you need to take action to avoid or eliminate them, and you need to report any hazards or unsafe conditions. Emergencies on a job site can and will happen. That's why it's so important you and your employer are ready for them when they do occur. Preparation plays a crucial role in ensuring you have the necessary equipment, know where to go, and are aware of how to keep yourself safe in an emergency situation. After completing this module, you'll be able to describe the appropriate actions to take based on your level of authorization in the event of an emergency. It's been said that you should expect the best, but be prepared for the worst. However, a written emergency action plan tells you the correct way to respond to an emergency situation that may occur on your job site. The plan should address all possible emergency situations. When OSHA requires your company to have an emergency action plan, it must include the following elements: the method for reporting a fire or other emergency, procedures for emergency evacuation, including exit route assignments, procedures for employees who remain to operate critical equipment or perform functions before they evacuate, procedures to account for all employees after evacuation, procedures for employees performing rescue or medical duties, and the names or job titles of individuals to contact for more information about the plan or an explanation of duties under the plan. In addition, you may find that your emergency action plan also includes detailed lists of all personnel working on site, including their home telephone numbers, their duties, and responsibilities, a map of the job site, a list or map of all headcount locations, instructions for handling chemical spills or releases, and information on the types of fires and how to handle fire extinguishers. For an emergency action plan to be successful, all employees should participate in the training sessions and practice any drills held by your company. First aid is the immediate and basic care given to an injured or ill person until trained medical help arrives. OSHA requires employers to adequately train selected workers to perform first aid if a hospital, clinic, or infirmary is not nearby. If you are not a designated and trained first aid provider, do not attempt to administer first aid. Your first step in attending to an injured coworker is to call for help. Be sure you know what number to call in the event of a medical emergency. Your next priority is to protect yourself and your coworkers. Treat all blood and other body fluids as if it's infectious, and never offer assistance without proper training and PPE, even where first aid kits are readily accessible. Regardless of the injury, stay with the injured person and attempt to keep them warm, dry, and alert. Step aside as soon as a qualified responder arrives. If someone accidentally gets electrocuted, don't touch the person. Call for help and find a qualified person to shut off the power source to the equipment. It's human nature to want to jump in and help out. But understand doing so may cause more harm than good to both yourself and your injured coworker. Bloodborne pathogens are disease-causing microorganisms that live in a person's blood and other potentially infectious materials, or OPIM, and can make you extremely sick or even cause death. Bloodborne pathogens cannot be seen by the naked eye, and anytime you come into contact with another person's blood or OPIM, you're at risk for becoming infected. These pathogens can enter your system when an infected person's blood or OPIM comes in contact with your eyes, mouth, nasal membranes, or non-intact skin, including a blister or an open wound. Some common ways you could become infected on the job site include aiding a bleeding coworker, cleaning up blood after an accident, cleaning up tools and equipment following an accident, or being cut by a sharp object that's contaminated with someone's blood. If you become injured while on the job site, call for help immediately. If you're bleeding, do what you can to keep any responders from becoming exposed. Remember, as a standard precaution, you should treat all blood and OPIM as if it's infected. If you accidentally come into contact with someone else's blood or OPIM, follow these 3 simple steps. 1. Remove all clothing and shoes that have been contaminated with blood and dispose of them in a biohazard bag. 2. Thoroughly wash the affected skin with soap and water. Flush any splashes to your eyes, nose, or mouth with water. And 3. Formally report the incident to your foreman. If blood or OPIM gets in your eyes, mouth, nasal membranes, or open wounds, or if a contaminated object cuts or punctures your skin, it's called an exposure incident. If this occurs, take these same precautions and seek medical attention as soon as possible. The Hazardous Waste Operations and Emergency Response Standard, more commonly known as the HAZWOPER standard, calls for specific procedures a company should follow when handling hazardous waste. It also establishes emergency response procedures to protect both workers and the public from harm if a hazardous substance is ever accidentally released. Although much of the HAZWOPER standard applies to companies that specialize in the cleanup, treatment, storage, and disposal of hazardous waste, some parts of the standard apply to companies like yours, where an accidental release or spill might occur. As an added precaution, some job sites designate hazmat teams who are trained to handle chemical spills and releases. If you discover a chemical spill or release, never attempt to stop it or clean it up unless you are a trained hazmat team member. Instead, stay clear of the area and follow your company's emergency notification procedures. Workplace violence is a growing concern. Annually, about 2 million American workers are victims of workplace violence. Workplace violence can occur on or off the job site and can range from threats and verbal abuse to physical assaults and homicide. It isn't just employees who commit acts of workplace violence. Offenders can be customers, vendors, workers' estranged spouses, boyfriends or girlfriends, or acquaintances of an employee. Workplace violence can be caused by personal issues like financial, legal, or marital problems, drug or alcohol abuse, or even mental or physical illnesses. It could also be caused by workplace-related factors, including perceptions of unequal or unfair treatment, job loss, or harassment by coworkers. Workplace situations rarely erupt into violence without warning. The key to controlling workplace violence is to identify and deal with potential problems before they get out of hand. A few potential warning signs include when a normally good employee suddenly becomes a problem employee. An employee becomes increasingly frustrated, lashes out, or picks fights with coworkers. A coworker becomes obsessed with and carries weapons. A coworker becomes intimidating or begins bullying others. Or a coworker uses physically aggressive body language. Keep yourself and others safe. Be alert to the warning signs. All threats should be taken seriously, handled promptly, and reported to your foreman, human resources department, or the local police. Know your company's crisis management or emergency response procedures. Know who to call for help if a potentially violent situation seems likely or if an actual emergency occurs. Know in advance how to respond to threats and violent acts. This includes knowing how to move away from violent situations, where to go, and how to warn others. And be on the lookout and report any physical security concerns. This includes doors or gates left unlocked, unsafe areas where lights are not working, and suspicious or unidentified visitors. As a preventive measure, your employer can establish a zero-tolerance policy toward workplace violence and take strict disciplinary action against the offenders. Talk with your foreman about your company's policies on workplace violence. Records of certain injuries or illnesses that occur while at work are required to be kept on file. According to OSHA, an injury or illness is recordable if it meets any one of the following conditions: results in death, requires any days away from work, results in restricted work or a job transfer, requires medical treatment beyond first aid, results in a loss of consciousness, or is a significant injury or illness diagnosed by a physician. These records help find links between exposures and health effects and help employers take preventive measures to protect their employees. This is why it's so important you report any injuries or illnesses. OSHA requires these records to be maintained for 5 years and made available to employees upon request. Talk to your foreman to understand how your company handles injury and illness records. Let's hope you never find yourself in an emergency situation. But if you do, here are some highlights you should remember when responding in an emergency. Follow your company's emergency action plans. Call for help when assisting an injured coworker. Treat all blood and OPIM as if it's infectious. Report all hazardous spills immediately. Recognize and report any signs of workplace violence. And report all injuries and illnesses. By keeping these tips in mind, you'll be better prepared and ready to respond to emergencies. Safety on the construction job site doesn't happen by accident. Your employer is responsible for creating a hazard-free workplace so you don't get hurt while on the job. But keep in mind, your personal safety starts with you. You need to be aware of the potential hazards on the job site, you need to take action to avoid or eliminate them, and you need to report any hazards or unsafe conditions. On the job site, most of us use at least some sort of device to help us get our jobs done. Now, whether it's a simple hand tool, a power tool, or a piece of heavy equipment, you need to understand how to operate it in a safe way to protect yourself and those around you. And after completing this module, you'll be able to recognize the hazards associated with using tools and equipment and identify safe ways to operate them. Most of us have been using tools for so long that it's easy to overlook the hazards they pose. There are two general categories of tools commonly used on job sites: hand tools and power tools. A hand tool is any portable, non-powered device that you hold in your hands. Hand tools range from a tiny screwdriver to a large sledgehammer. A power tool may be a portable handheld device like a circular saw or drill, or a stationary unit like a stand grinder, drill press, or table saw. The only difference is that power tools require an external source of power to work. Hazards associated with hand and power tools can be put into two broad categories: action and condition. The danger may come from the tool's action or motion, such as cutting, shearing, drilling, sanding, or fastening. For example, the tool's action may create sparks or flying particles. Or the danger may come from the tool's condition. Rusty metal, jagged edges, missing guards, and damaged switches are all examples of poor tool condition. It's your employer's responsibility to keep the tools and equipment you use in safe condition, but you are responsible for using them properly and reporting any damage. Before using any tools, select the right tool for the job, thoroughly inspect it, report any damage, and remove it from service if it's unsafe. Familiarize yourself with the tool before operating it. This may mean reading the operating instructions or asking your foreman for a demonstration. Wear the necessary PPE. And secure or remove loose clothing and jewelry before using tools, since they can easily become caught in moving parts. Stress injuries caused by repetitive motion or using a tool incorrectly can be prevented by using the right size tool for the job, holding the tool in the right way, and by taking periodic breaks. If you're working in areas where flammable liquids are stored or used, or when there may be combustible dust present, make sure you use spark-resistant tools made from non-ferrous materials. Hand tools, although not a powered device, can still be dangerous when they're not in use. Be sure to store sharp hand tools like saw blades or knives in a safe location. There are a few additional safety precautions you should take when operating power tools. Never carry a power tool by its cord or hose, or yank a cord to disconnect it from its power supply. Also, never allow cords to touch heat, oil, or sharp edges, since broken, gouged, or worn-out cords can create an electrical shock. Secure your work with clamps or a vise when possible, freeing both hands to operate the tool. Keep your finger off the switch or button while carrying a plugged-in power tool to avoid unintentionally starting the tool. If you need to use extension cords, it's best to use three-pronged cords, since they are grounded by the third prong. Never use a three-pronged cord that has a bent or missing prong. All power tools should be double insulated or properly grounded. And disconnect tools when they're not in use, before servicing them, and when changing their accessories to avoid an accidental startup. Tools have the ability to help make your job much easier, but if you're not careful, they can also cause some serious damage. It's easy for dirt, dust, or other slippery materials to collect on your hands and feet, adding to any existing slip, trip, and fall hazards already present. Check your boots and hands before using stairways and ladders to ensure you have a solid grip. Because we use stairs so often, it's easy to forget they can be hazardous. It's a good idea to inspect stairways regularly. Look for loose and missing treads, stairs, and handrails. Also, keep an eye out for protruding nails, splinters, and holes. Here are some other ways you can protect yourself from injury. Use handrails whenever possible. Don't run up or down stairs or jump from landing to landing. If you're carrying something, move slowly and use extra caution. Don't carry a load you can't see over. Keep stairways clear of clutter and debris, and report any unsafe conditions promptly, such as broken stair treads, floorboards, or handrails. Ladders seem easy to use, but they are often the cause of serious injuries, as people tend to take them for granted. Be sure to select the right ladder for the job. Before climbing, inspect the ladder for excessive wear and damage and check it for cracked, loose, or slippery rungs, split side rails, or worn-out shoes before climbing it. If the ladder is damaged, don't use it. Tag it as damaged and take it out of service. Here are a few additional tips to help you stay safe when working with ladders. Set up your ladder on a firm, level surface. Secure and stabilize the ladder to prevent it from moving while in use. Barricade or secure your ladder if you set it up in doorways, passageways, or other areas where it could be bumped or moved. Keep the area around the top and bottom of the ladder clear. Face the ladder at all times and use at least one hand to grasp the ladder when climbing. Always work within the side rails of the ladder, and use a tool belt to carry tools and other items you need, or hoist these items after you've climbed the ladder. When using a straight ladder or extension ladder, secure rung locks and follow the 4-to-1 rule to get the proper angle. For every 4 feet of the ladder's length from the ground to its upper support, you move the ladder's base 1 foot out from the wall. So for example, for a height of 20 feet, you'll need 5 feet between the wall and the base of the ladder. Also, set up a straight ladder so it extends 3 feet above the roof line or top support. In addition, there are a few things you shouldn't do when working with ladders. Don't use metal ladders near electrical lines. Never tie ladders together to make them longer, or place a ladder on boxes or blocks to make it taller. Never use a step ladder as a straight ladder. Don't use a ladder as a brace, skid, lever, or for any other unintended use. Never paint or coat a wooden ladder which could hide defects. Never move a ladder while someone is on it. Don't load a ladder beyond the maximum load capacity. And never use the top step of a ladder. If at any time a ladder appears unsafe, remove it from service, mark it as do not use, and report it to your foreman immediately. Scaffolds are temporary, elevated, or suspended platforms used to support employees, equipment, materials, and other items when work is being performed. You may see scaffolds in use at your job site or be expected to work on one. Most scaffold-related injuries occur when a worker is struck by a falling object, falls due to loose or damaged planks or supports, or slips on the scaffold. Before each work shift, and after any incident that could affect a scaffold structure, your employer's competent person must inspect all scaffolds and scaffold components for visible defects. Even if you're not the competent person, it's a good idea to be on the lookout for hazards, such as warped, broken, or cracked planks on platforms, materials or debris in walkways, inadequate guardrails or toe boards, loose, bent, or broken components, nearby power lines, a lack of safe access points, and unevenly distributed loads. When working from a scaffold, make sure it's not loaded more than its maximum intended load or rated capacity. Also, a scaffold should not be moved while you're on it unless it has been designed to do that. If you have any concerns, ask your foreman or your company's competent person. It's better to be safe than sorry. Aerial lifts and scissor lifts allow for increased mobility and flexibility when working at heights. Before you can work with these lifts, your company will provide a qualified person to deliver training on how to recognize and minimize each lift's hazards. When working with aerial lifts or scissor lifts, you may face electrical hazards, fall hazards, and falling object hazards. It's important to be aware of these hazards if you work on or around lifts. Inspect the lift thoroughly before each use. There are different requirements for fall protection when using each type of lift. For example, aerial lifts require a personal fall arrest or restraint system to be worn at all times and attached to the boom or basket. On the other hand, scissor lifts only require that the manufacturer's guardrail be in place when operating the lift. Do not operate or work from these lifts unless you have been adequately trained. The work done on job sites often requires the use of earth-moving and lifting and hauling equipment. Earth-moving equipment is designed to move soil and can include things like scrapers, loaders, wheel tractors, and bulldozers. Lifting and hauling equipment is designed to move raw materials and can include cranes, hoists, rough terrain forklifts, stackers, and masted forklifts. Each type of equipment presents different hazards depending on where and how they're being used. This is why OSHA requires workers to be trained on each specific type of heavy equipment before they can operate it. Never operate mechanical equipment unless you have been trained and are authorized to do so. Even if you're not the operator, there are some precautions you should take while working near heavy equipment. Listen for horns and always be aware of your surroundings. Never approach heavy equipment head-on. Remain within the operator's view. Never position yourself between heavy equipment and a fixed object like a wall. Never walk under a raised load. And never ride on one unless it is designed to carry passengers. If you see something when working around heavy equipment that looks unsafe, let the operator or your foreman know about it right away. When service or maintenance work is being performed on mechanical and electrical equipment, workers may be injured or killed by the release of hazardous energy. To prevent this, those who are responsible for cleaning, servicing, adjusting, or setting up equipment, otherwise known as authorized individuals, will place locks and tags on the power source. The lock is designed to prevent the equipment from starting so the necessary work can be performed safely. The tag, on the other hand, identifies the date and who is responsible for completing the work and contains a warning message such as "Do not operate." On your job site, you may see equipment that has been temporarily placed out of service with a lock and tag. Never attempt to restart or operate equipment that has been locked or tagged out. Only operate the equipment after the authorized employee notifies you he has completed the work and has removed the lock and tag. Equipment helps you get the job done every day. Here are some highlights for their safe use. Understand how to use tools and keep them in good condition. Set up, inspect, and use stairways, ladders, and scaffolds properly. Follow good safety practices when working with aerial and scissor lifts. Stay alert when working around heavy equipment and only use it if you are trained and authorized to do so. And do not use any equipment that is locked or tagged out. Equipment is everywhere on the job site. Respect its power, keep safe distances when it's in operation, and always use equipment for its intended purpose.